Welcome back, everyone. Today we are tackling one of the biggest and I guess most struggled with part of the total tuning that goes into tuning a car, which is fueling. How to tune your fuel tables and your wide open throttles. So fueling, in order for you to get to fueling itself, there's a few steps that you have to do. Well, there's quite a few steps you have to get to done first before you can get to that. So far, you break your total tuning task into a few sections. Number one, I guess for these cars will be to get the car started and have it idle. Then you get it to cruise. And third is part throttle, which involves both, your tables and your tip-ins and your injection. So so far what we have done is we've done the scaling, which involves cruising and idling. I think this car came out pretty good. We were at, in between positive and negative 3, I guess, of your fuel injector scaling acceptability, long-term fuel trims and all that. So the car is driving pretty good now. I've put it through light throttle. It's acting well. That table that we went through, tip in, usually controls that. So right now what we're doing is feeling the car out, how it feels on low boost. Before we can get to that, we will have to cover a few things. Let's take a look at the fuel tables and how we set all that up so we can get to the point where we can actually start tuning. So I made a video on me driving the car on my way to the dyno to see what it does and everything on my base table, and it's good. It's I've done these injectors quite a bit, and this is a stock turbo. It's very predictable and no cams, so it's even more predictable, and it's driving pretty good. The blow-off valve I have is a tile Q, and it sounds different than the regular tile Q, and at first I thought it was a compressor surge, but it's not. This is the way, for some reason, this thing sounds. I don't know. Maybe it's because the throttle body and everything is ported. I don't know if that it'll have anything to do with that. But I just noticed, if anybody can tell me if this blow-off valve is supposed to sound like this. So right now I'm driving and I'm actually feeling the car out. It's idling well, 14.7. The fuel trims are good. The vacuum is steady. I do have 3 triple plates on this, triple disc Exetti, which is one of the best, believe it or not, dailies you can actually get. The clutch, because of its multiple surfaces, it's softer. It doesn't require that much. I don't know how they made it like that. So I'm at the gas station right now getting gas, and let's see, I do a wide open throttle here right after I get the gas, and it looks to be and pretty good. I did it on 3rd gear. It's doing 25 pounds of pressure, but I've just verified this on the street, and I'm going to show you how I got to this point and actually what I'm doing on the dyno. Timing and a lot of stuff is involved, but I'm going to tell you about just the fuel part. On a later video, we're going to cover the timing part. That's the power. So for this video, we're not concerned with making power. We're not concerned with anything, just getting the fueling right, and everything else. So on this road, I was being irresponsible. I just did I think like 60 or 70, and it's like 40 miles per hour zone, and usually there's police officers there. So we're gonna show you what I'm doing right now. So far we set up the SD tables. We have done our scalings of injectors, and now we're ready to do part throttle and see exactly where we are, whatever adjustments that we need to make. So we're going to go to high octane fuel, and we're also going to use ignition timing tables as well. On high octane fuel, I set this from from experience, but typically if I'm starting out, you don't know the car, you don't know anything about it. Over here up to 100 is 14 point whatever, 14.7 I think. What you want to do is you're going to aim for about 12.5, but richer on the spool and part throttle. So part throttle for us is going to live here in this section. Remember, we set up the SD to be 1-to-1 ratio. So most likely our, anywhere from 0 to 18 pounds of boost is going to be here. So you want this to be pretty rich. Acceptable spool AFR is 12.5. So I would just make my end very rich, which is the part that we want to go wide open throttle, 11.5, this part. I would make that, say, 12. Okay, and around 22, 25 PSI, you want to go for your target, which is 11.5. And then highlight everything, press B, and it'll interpolate for you. The rest, 14.7, whatever you had before, highlight this section, just press B, and it will interpolate everything for you. And this typically works, and this is on the rich side. The other part that you're going to be concerned with is where your turbo spools and gets a max spool. So I know on this car, if I hit the throttle at 3,000 RPMs, and by the way, please don't hit the throttle before that. You don't want to go wide open throttle at 2,000 RPMs. That's not good for you, not good for any part of the car or anything. So a stock turbo, 3,000 is acceptable. I know the spool, the full boost is going to come in at, say, 3,500 or even 3,700, but you got to go to your wastegate for that. So 3,500, 3,600, let's just say the entire section from 35 to 4,000 RPMs here. I would just make this part kind of rich. So let's go to 10.5. Yes, it's not going to hit 10.5. Let's just go for that. And then just in case you overboost, say to 30,000, I would make the 30,000 10. And then all you have to do is interpolate. So now you got your peak torque, which is right here. We'll cover that. Down here, which is you're going to be spooling, your graph is going to, your computer is going to use these values. You're going to see full boost at, say, 25 to 27, which is in this area, these RPMs. And by the time you get to, say, red line, which is 7,500, it's going to come down to here. So it looks good. What I would do is just interpolate all the way down. Set these values to 11. Again, very rich. And then press V, it'll interpolate. And I would just leave this alone. This is fine. That's far as the feel. It looks erratic for now. You're going to smooth this out while you're tuning. When you come to your timing, you don't want to over time this right now. Again, we're not making power. So what we want to do is set up the timing for the spool. I left this part stock. And then I just go for peak torque. So now peak torque, again, is going to come between 35 and, 4. We don't know exactly. I would say 6 is good. I don't go above 6 no matter what for peak torque timing. And then, overboost area, lower it a little bit. And then by 7,500, you don't know how your car is going to react. So I would lower this to, say, 12. Again, 7,500 RPMs by 220 psi. And then this to lower this to, I don't know, say 8. And I would just interpolate. That's your red line. I start there. And then you take your peak torque area and you highlight this. And this should be good enough for you to do a dyno pull without causing any issues. The spool area, you highlight the spool area, which is, part throttle from 2,200 and say 4,000 RPMs, and then your peak torque. And you basically just press B and it'll interpolate everything. You don't want to run, as closer you get to, I guess, your peak boost, you want to lower the timing. And you don't want to run double digits in peak torque. So make sure it's smooth as can be between the different cells. I would just do maximum of 1 or 2 degrees, and sometimes a sudden change between cells will also cause knock. So you don't want to, give it, sudden changes, gradual. One of the tables that really control your part throttle and boost applications, other than the boost area itself, that's the boost tables itself, is actually your open loop and closed loop throttle and load. So as you can see, this is going to stay at closed loop up to 120 loads, which is like 5 pounds or something, 5 or 10 pounds, which is fine. But then as the RPM goes up, your load required to go into open loop gradually just gets lower and lower. So this works for me. I know how I drive. A lot of people will put it to much higher. So for our purpose, I would just put up to 4,000 to 100. After that, I would put it to 60 and copy this table over. And the throttle, 60% throttle, up to 60% throttle is open loop. Below 60% throttle is closed loop. Past 60 is open loop at 35, regardless of what the load says. And then after that, as you can see, it gets lower and lower throttle requirement to go into open loop tables. So the difference between open loop and closed loop, this is your open loop table. In open loop, it just uses these equations. It does not use anything. On closed loop, exactly what it sounds like, a closed loop circle, it uses oxygen feedback to achieve 14.7 ratio. Now, it's not going to aim for any other Stokio, 14.7, right? You don't want 14.7 in anything other than idle or cruise. Using that logic, you set these table up. 14.7, you only want to be in closed loop during idle and cruise, and anything in between. Wide open throttle, definitely you want to use these tables. Now, for other cars, they use wide bands as their permanent closed loop operations, and you could do that for wide open throttles as well, and that makes life easier, as with the AEM Infinity. So now that we have our base table set up, let's go to the boost table, because you don't want to overboost. Again, knowing your setup is the biggest thing here. So wastegate duty cycle, as you can see, I know this turbo, this works for me. 50 is the max I'll do, because I want the boost to drop off up top. The desired load, the boost, when you come to this table, by the way, you have to make sure that it's scaled correctly for your map sensor. So I have a 5 bar. Let's see, where is that? 5 bar. So as you can see, my target was 27. You want to lower this to 25. I don't want to hit more than that. You can even make it even lower, 22, whatever you feel comfortable with, but nothing above 25. I feel comfortable at 24, 25, because I know that's that's what these wastegates do. Now, if I were you and not familiar with this, I would highly suggest the wastegate part of it. Start with, if it's a stock turbo, 30%, maybe even lower, and gradually work your way up. You're going to be spending a lot of time on the boost just to get the curve correct. When you do boost, make sure you turn off the boost error part. Again, I'm not covering in this video in depth how to tune boost. We're just focusing on the fuel part. So that's what we have so far for the fuel. Again, everything is based on that you set up your VE table correctly, going into part throttle, and you know where it needs and where not. And again, to really understand this table, as I mentioned in my other videos, it's more like which load cells, these tables control which load cells your wide open throttle operations will control more than anything. So, using these calculations and the other table, and this table, combined, the equations control which of these load cells is going to control. So once you have set this up, make sure as you gradually go to the right or higher load, you are running much richer. And the reason is because otherwise your tables will look, when you control these to add fuel, it's not going to really work because you're not setting this up correctly. So I'm going to put this to 9. Again, we're not going to go to 35 pounds, so just in case, and you should be good. You should be ready to go. And then if you want, there's a lot of people out here that are very, I guess, OCD about tables. You can interpolate and smooth everything out, but again, we're going to do that later. So now we got this set up. Let's go, do some part throttle operation and some wide open throttle operations. So I actually set all that up, that whatever I just showed you before I did all these runs. You have to be very careful, pay attention to check engine light flashing and your wideband very carefully on the boost, make sure nothing goes over. Test it out with 1 or 2 psi, 5 psi to go to 10 psi next, 12 psi, 20 psi, and just keep checking on the street or the dyno to see how the car reacts to boost. And there's no other way to do it. You could do all you want in your equations, but this is basically a trial and error with these computers. So this was a Saturday. This was yesterday, 4th of July. We were doing this, and the car is driving great. I love the fact that even with all this hard stuff up in the car, the suspension is, I have a the stance track coilovers, then I have 275 40 17s on 17 by 9-inch wheels, and they're still good. I mean, those are rough tires. They're very aggressive, but it feels good. The car feels planted. I don't really have to do anything. So right now, right in front of the shop, this is where I'm heading in. There's a small road. I just did earlier to I think like 6,000 RPMs and 23 psi. I'm gonna try it again right now, and everything was great, like 11 point, something. The spool area was a little lean, but I'm gonna retest that on the dyno. So this is usually where I test the car. Second gear. This is third gear. Yeah, everything seemed fine. The car felt great. Felt like a 300 something. But this is the Evo 8 stock turbo. Maybe you'll get 360 on the 85, 350, but usually they're around 310, 330 on 93. So I'm going to put the car on the dyno right now. There's a couple, those of you who are going to tune and are thinking about using the dyno on your own, just a couple of things you should know before you use it. First, don't be scared to use it. I love it when people tune their own cars and use the dyno for their advantage. Once you get on the dyno, you'll be fine. Couple of pulls later, you'll feel great. All the fear will be gone. Used to happen to me all the time. And here's the messed up thing. I think I said in another video. I used to watch dyno fails before I used to go use the dyno, and I shouldn't have done that, and it used to cause some panics. But once you get strapped into the dyno, basically there's a test run that needs to be done. Just get your car up to like 40, 50 miles per hour, and somebody needs to be watching, and that's basically it. So let's take a look at a run that I did, the first run, so we can start talking more about manipulating the fuel tables. Let's take a look at this log where the car made like 3 something. All right, so let's take a look at the log from that last run, and let's freeze the top row. Let's see how we need to manipulate our field tables. Now I've adjusted the field tables because of showing you what to do, but let's take a look at this in real time, how I would adjust from my previous table. Okay, we have this up now. I'm gonna consolidate some of this so it's easy for us to see. All right, so basically what I was logging was the RPM, throttle position sensor, load values, knock sum, timing, 5 bar, my AEM AEM 5 bar. If you have an Omni 4 bar, there's an option in there for you as well. AFR map, this is the table that the computer was accessing, or the other way to look at it is target AFR. So let's rename this for target AFR table. Battery voltage, my IAT sensor, air temperature sensor. Okay. Coolant temp, and my wideband. Okay, my wideband 02. So let's name this actual AFR. Okay. Now let's take a look. What did we do? Looking at the TPS and the RPM first. I'm looking at wideband. Everything looks all right. Load, and I'm still in vacuum. Here we go. If I press the throttle 50%, it's a sudden change in throttle. What did it do for our fuel? It was at 2,500 RPM. I'm already above 0 PSI. My timing is 17, 16 degrees. My target is 14 AFR to 13. It's just getting into 13 load. And it looks like my IAT is 100, which is okay. But look at my actual AFR. It's 13, 12 is getting richer, which is good, that means I'm overshooting my fuels on 3 different tables. But as for this is, I'm happy with this. You don't want it to be leaner, you want it to be richer. Let's go down a little further. I'm gradually going from 50% to close to 100, so now I'm in 100% throttle. My RPM is 3,000. We're almost 3,000. And my load is getting up there. What is the 5-bar reading? My 5-bar, I am at 7 psi. And my target AFR is 12, and my, well, 12.6. And my wide open, my wideband is also 12, which is great. We're still in good shape. Okay, I'm okay with that. A little bit lean, but I'm okay with that. Let's see what the leanness does. Now, going down, going down, going down. See, my load is 200, which is 14 pounds of boost. And I'm showing 1 count of knock. And that you can see right away is because I am actually very lean right here. 12. You shouldn't be at 12 now. It should be like more like low 12s, not high 12s. Almost 13 here. And then at 3,400, I am 17 pounds of boost, 2 counts of knock. My timing has reduced already to 4, so which is I think I commanded 6 and then lowered it by 2 to kind of counteract the knock. My target AFR was 11.7. I'm at 11.8, which is good, but didn't react quick enough. The knock has a decay factor. Once it sees knock at some place, it's not going to just turn it off just because it didn't sense knock before. It'll keep, calculating for knock for a certain period of time in these ECUs and some other ECUs. But between 3,700 and 3,900, I've already went up 2 psi and hit my max boost. My timing demand also went down because of the peak torque, which is 3 plus 1 knock, 1 takeaway by knock, which is 4 I commanded, and my AFR is on point. This is what I want to happen, and it happened, which is 11.5, 11. But in order for me to get that, I had to command a target AFR of 11.6. So these numbers in these fuel cells are, I would use the word arbitrary. They're not, don't think that this is what's being calculated for. This is just a number. It's a filtered number from all these tables and one or two more tables. So I wouldn't think that, oh my God, I'm commanding 10.5 just to get 11.5. Don't worry about that. Do what you need to do in these tables. But the harder you make these tables work, that means some of your other tables are off. But don't let that shy you away from making, huge adjustment when it comes to throwing fuel. Now, taking away fuel, I would do slow steps. Let's get back to our logs. Where were we? Now, I don't like this area. I want this to be a little richer. We'll come back, but how much do we make calculations? Going down, knock has gone away. One here, but I wouldn't worry about that. As you can see, the boost holds to 22 psi. My actual AFR is great. And it gets richer towards the top, probably because of my VE table. So up top, when I'm losing boost, which is by design, and these RPMs, wide open throttle, I am actually getting pretty rich. So I need to make some adjustment. Then I want to let off the throttle. The wideband reads 18, which is good. It's doing decel as well. So how do I make these adjustments? I mean, here we can take a portion of this. Hey, I see 12.8, and I actually want 12.2 or 12. What changes do you actually make to these tables? Yeah, we can go in here. I'm off half a AFR. I can just lower this to say 11 instead of 11.5. we can do that. There is an easier way. Again, I am not the maker of this formula. This has been around for years and decades, ever since, I guess, fuel systems have been created for cars and adjustments were created. These tables, I mean, these equations always existed. So it looks crazy, but believe me, it's much easier than you think. I'm just using this as a definition. So what we want to do is find out new values that we need to input into these cells from what we know, right? We already know what these cells read. We know what the wideband reads, and we know what we want the AFR to be. So for the equation that we're going to input into Excel to get, a target AFR, let's just have some base understanding of what this means. So this abbreviation just means new AFR table value. What do we want the new AFR to be? I think we want, this is the part that we actually want out of the Excel sheet. Target AFR value is usually 11.5, or if you want, we could do 11.3. Current target AFR is read from the map tables, okay? The actual fuel, high octane fuel table. And actual AFR, this is actually wideband. And the equation goes to get your new values that you should be inputting into the high octane fuel tables. You have to know your target AFR. I'm sorry, your current target AFR is your high octane fuel table. Your target AFR value is what you want this to be, which is 11.3 or whatever you want, and your wideband reading. Instead of doing all this manually, like, okay, let's see, I have 3,000 RPMs. I want 11.7 at 3,000 RPMs at 22 load values. So let's see, 3,000 RPMs, right? At 22. I think I changed the tables, but it's here somewhere. Instead of changing it manually here, what we can do is just go here and plug in the equation. So I would click one of these cells, the empty cells, go here and put an equal sign. As soon as you put an equal sign, it's going to start your equations, okay? All you have to do is use the existing values that we have, so we don't have to keep going and calculating everything. Is just input the equation. Those of you who know Excel know that this is very easy to do. It's just, applying yourself. Parentheses, what are we looking for? We're looking for, so a target AFR is 12.1. And what is our commanded AFR, our current commanded AFR? That's the equation, right? Current commanded AFR. Just make sure that's what it is. Yes. So our current commanded AFR is going to be right here on your log, which is target AFR, right? It's going to read as AFR map on the original. Remember, we changed the name. So just click this table. It's going to read the actual letter that's assigned to, and it's going to take all of the values here, and then close the operation divided by your actual AFR, which is your wideband, as we put it, actual AFR. Okay, and just press enter. Now this value will literally tell you what to input into these cells in order for you to get your cell values that you need to put. So remember, we wanted to do 12.1 for certain areas. So let's take a look. which area that would be. Okay, so here's the knock area that we saw right here. Okay. So in order for me to change the, in order for me to achieve 12.1 in this area, everywhere you see 12.8, I would have to change these load cells to anywhere from 11.9 to 11.13 from 3,300 RPM, from 29 to 3,300 RPM. And the mid cells, the spool area, which is anywhere from 140 to 200 load cells. So let's see. Let's do that for argument's sake. So these cells right here, I would have to change it to from low RPM to high. This should be a 12, and by the time we close out, it should be 11.9, and then highlight every area, and then press B, and you should get that gradual down. This should keep you in the 12.1 load cell. AFR. Now, we also want to do 11.5 because some of the load cells didn't. So this is 11.5 that you want to do. So what you want to do is you want to copy this and just change it to 11.5. Press enter. Okay. From here on in, we need to, but a 10.9 should get you to 11.5 between 3,500 RPM to 4,000 RPM. So let's go do that. So the rest, which is 4,000 RPM right here, and the load cells, I know I'm just going to put it all the way up here. That's going to be at 10.9, and we're going to do a vertical interpolation, and basically it does it for you. And then you keep doing this on and on for all your target AFRs that's not in target. And again, the takeaway from this is this equation. Plug it into your Excel sheet and it'll make your life a lot easier. I probably didn't do a good job of explaining, but it's new AFR map values is your target AFR value, which is 11.5 or 12 point, whatever you want in that section, multiplied by current map, right? Current target AFR, and divided by actual AFR you see in the wideband, and you get those values. And that's basically it. The rest of the video, I am actually showing you my dyno. I'm going over a couple of these fuels because I increased the boost a little bit later. And basically just tune as it comes. Again, I'm not tuning for power. This is just for video purpose and testing purpose. In one of the runs, I actually add a little bit of timing just to see if the fuel table that I produced is good enough for a higher timing. So what happens sometimes is when you increase the timing, you actually need to change the fuel tables, make it richer, so it knocks a little less because you're adding more stress to the motor. And I've done that just 2 or 3 runs just to see what the best value is for my fuel tables based on timing increase as well. A lot of people forget to do that, but it's part of the tuning process.